Oh, Ashley and I are live again. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Ashley, do you want to do the honors? And as I check to make sure that we're live on all the various channels on our
Yes.
topic today.
Yes. Well, welcome if you're new here. I'm Ashley. This is Constantin, and we met randomly through a podcast and had really deep conversations. Both had a YouTube channel, and we're like, let's just go live. Like these deep metaphysical, spiritual, all the things conversations we have. We think you might be interested in kind of being a fly on the wall. And of course, you have the opportunity to ask questions at any point. But today we kind of were talking back and forth, and then we're like, let's go, because we're already starting in the conversation. But really about what if it were easy and simple? What if like everything we've been taught about good things only come from the hard and the difficult, and it's got to be complicated or it's not worth it? What if like all of that is trash? Complete trash.
What if?
And we are just like placing ourselves in this state of pain and suffering for no apparent reason. So
Yes.
yeah, we thought
Yeah.
we'd talk about that.
Well, let's start with the two obvious things because you and I were talking about this offline. But let's look at the definition from the dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary here using Google for the two words, right? Easy means achieved without great effort, presenting few difficulties, right? So when we look at our life, we can say that our life is not easy because it's not really achieved without great effort. It's definitely not presenting few difficulties. I mean, for most people, right? And that's why I used to be in the category too. And then simple means something is easily understood or done, presenting no difficulty. So meaning again, a challenge that shows up in your life, can it be easy and simple? So simple because it doesn't present any difficulty, and easy because you understand it and you can achieve it without great effort.
Yeah. Yeah, so like the simplest like way to wrap my head around that is like simple is like instructions. Like simple versus chaotic. To complete a project, it's simple. And then like easy is the actual performance of it, the actual doing of it. Is it hard or is it easy? But yeah, I mean the simple piece, the Course in Miracles, if nobody's familiar, that's really what I've been using to unwind my mind is A Course in Miracles. And it says it's simple, may not always be easy, but it is simple. And the mere fact is it's simple because it's as easy as a choice to not choose the ego, right? Like how simple, like just don't choose the ego. So that's the simplicity of it. It's
Yeah,
not
because
like
the
this.
instructions are like a one line, right? It's like
Yeah,
don't choose the
yeah.
ego.
It's not this entire like, oh my gosh, if you sit on the left side of your chair and you throw salt over the right while you're standing on one foot and you're patting your head, then money will come to you.
Yes, I love that because now I understand because you're kind of going like this in the pre conversation we had. It's like, hey, I may have the words wrong because I usually say it's easy but not simple, and now I see where you're coming from because for me it was in times easy but not simple, meaning that I was lacking the clear instructions or the clear way of doing things because I was complicating it in my mind. And it was easy because when I got to do it, it wasn't a great effort, but I was making it complicated, not simple, because I was looking for these complex solutions when the solution was staring me in the face. And if we look at the example, because we talked about this, and I'm curious, I mean, we can go deeper on this with the audience here as well. It's the idea of I was afraid of cold water all my life, but I didn't realize I was afraid. So that was the first challenge. I just thought that I just don't like cold water. And when I mean cold water, I mean even today is like 100 degrees here where I am. So I would love to go to the lake after this conversation. But normally, if I would go, even on a beautiful day like this, I would be miserable going in the water. And most of the time, I wouldn't even go in because I disliked it. But what I got to find out is that I actually had a fear of the cold water. And the way I discovered it was by the various process I went through myself to go to the spa when I was doing the cold plunges and realizing it's actually a fear. And then the way I was trying to resolve the fear, right, was what? Push through it, right? So I was not making it simple at all.
And painful. Push through it. Like if you have to push yourself through something, that means that every part of your being is saying no. And you're saying, but yes, because I'm only going to get stronger if. Because that's like personal development 101, right? If anybody's watching this and you've read any personal development book, it's always like the beauty's on the other side of the hard. If you want growth, you have to do the hard things. And like if you go Google right now, the Unicorn Effect podcast, it's a podcast I did almost over 3 years ago now. And they're these little 5-minute nuggets. And literally one of them is that me telling you, push through the hard because on the other side is where, but that's not living in the present moment, right? Like if we take it back where you and I always go back to is like, we want to live in the present moment, the here, the now. So why am I experiencing this difficulty and pain and all of these things in this moment when that's all I have is the present moment? That doesn't align.
Yeah. And I love that, because if you look at the example, like you're going back here, right? Like technically it was easy for me to push myself through it, but it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't in congruence with who I wanted to be or who I was becoming. And like you said, right, it wasn't the path of ease, so to speak, the path of now, the path of joy. And when I decided that I wanted to change the instructions, right, like in other words, discover those simple instructions I was missing out all along, that's when it became both simple and easy. Anyway, this is what I did, and it's, for those that don't know the story, it's fairly mind-blowing to me still. Instead of preparing to go into the cold plunge, the fear would rise up, and then I would master the courage and push through it, right? Because I was like, oh, this doesn't take great effort, I just have to man up and go through with it. But instead of doing that, I said, what if it could be different? What if it could be easy and simple in this case? And then instead of pushing the fear away, I dropped into the fear through meditation in my case. And I dropped into the fear, and all of a sudden a vision popped up of what had happened in my early childhood. And when I say early, I was like 2 years old. So there's no way my conscious mind would remember that, but my unconscious mind had it all there. I experienced what had happened and why I had let's call it trauma or the fear around it, felt it, observed it, released it. All of a sudden, the fear is gone. I get out, I go in the cold plunge, no problem. So now it became both simple and easy. Yeah. And life became a lot more pleasant in that aspect. I mean, now I go to the spa a couple of times a month. I'm enjoying the cold plunges. Literally, I have a smile on my face. I get to celebrate. I probably look like a silly man doing that when there's 4 other people around, but I don't care. I'm like, this is freaking amazing. I see all the benefits for my body and all of that. So that's why the question I ask myself all the time now, Ash, is like, what if it could be easy? And now with your help, I'm going to switch that to what if it could be easy and simple?
Yeah. I would invite you, Constantine, to not even ask the question, but just to know in that moment that if it's not easy, if it's not simple, then it's coming from a place of fear. So it's not a question of what if. The answer to that is always the same. It is. You're just choosing fear over love. So really being inspired and living in spirit, and allowing your guide to guide you from spirit is always simplistic and ease, because ultimately, when, at least for me, when you're at that point, it's like I'm not needing to make any decisions in this, like Ashley and the knowledge base she has as the persona, because the spirit that channels through me, or some people would say their highest self that channels through them, has the roadmap, has everything. So that's super simple when you allow the observer within that has the exact map. Like, how much more simple could that be? Right? Yeah. Like, if you're going to look for a treasure, it's like, do you choose the partner that already has literally the map to the treasure and already has the excavator and all these things? Or do you choose the partner that has a whole bunch of random ass ideas of where it might be, and you have to go test all of those before you know for sure?
Yeah.
Like, to be honest with you, right now, the majority of people, especially like this big personal development movement and all of that, is choosing the random guy with 50 million ideas and no concrete evidence as to any of them. That's going to be difficult. Like, that is the ego, that is fear. I mean, for me, I go with spirit, and like, I've just been mind blown as to how much my life has shifted and how truly leaning into the ease, everything gets done that needs to get done. And what does that mean? It, to many narratives that I hold in my head, that I've had to work through and am continuing to, sometimes those narratives look like you're lazy, you're avoiding, you're this, you're that. But truly, you know, deep within yourself, if you're actually avoiding and using something as an excuse, it feels slimy, right? But when that narrative comes and you're actually just like, I don't feel like doing it today, like, that's when injuries don't happen. That's when it just, everything is aligning in the matter of your guide is being able to guide you with the map in that moment.
Yes, 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 yes. I mean, it's so beautiful, Ashley. And going back to what you just said, right? Like, you shouldn't even need to ask the question. Now, I come from the point of view where, like, if you're still untying the ego, right, you're still coming from the mind a lot. For me, what this asking this question does, and especially when I work with my clients, is when I have them go through this process, it allows for pause and reframing of your thought patterns and your belief system. Because when you ask that question, it makes you stop and think, because it goes against everything that we have been taught or shown in society. And I imagine, I would say the end goal sounds maybe a bit too simplistic here, but maybe it is. The end goal would be like to not even have to ask the question, because you know everything is simple and easy, and that our mind or our ego or our brains are trying to complicate things to keep us in the illusion. So I see it as multiple steps, perhaps, but then you see this complicates it, right? Because then what if it was simple and easy?
It is. It's as simple as not acknowledging the ego. It's as simple as not choosing the ego. And to me, just again, another invitation of like, how you do one thing is how you do all things. If you still allow one piece of fear to come through in your life, you still have a belief in all of it. And not like stating this in a negative, like you're a bad person, but just
Yeah.
a reminder, when we're fully aware that we're choosing a statement that aligns with the ego because we think it helps us, like, that's actually the complete opposite. It's not helpful at all. And instead, it's really about, like, the ego only exists because of our belief in it. So when you ask that question, you're reiterating the belief in it. You're reiterating choice. You're reiterating that, like, fear even exists as a choice, but it only exists as a choice because your belief in it. So at any moment, if you, and this is where the simplicity comes in, if you don't want to ever experience fear again, it's as easy as never choosing it again and not even acknowledging it as a choice. But there's so many barriers in the way, right? That's where narratives come in and you're unpacking them. But I will tell you, beginning to shift the way you view things like that starts to prickle, and it starts to bring
Well,
some of those
that's
narratives
absolutely.
up. Yeah, it brings the narratives up. But if I constantly say to Ashley, like, okay, could it be this way or could it not? And I continue to give myself that choice, it doesn't prickle me, because I'm like, oh yeah, I still have the choice to choose fear if I want. You know, it's still acknowledging the existence of fear, which is still acknowledging how I use fear to cover up the shame and guilt that I'm not willing to look at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. We seem to be ignoring a lot of natural human behavior. I mean, I completely get what you're saying there. And for me, I would agree that that's what it appears like, that you're completely ignoring what you've been taught is natural human behavior and what you have been brought up to believe is the only way things are. And for me, I know the beliefs that I've held until this point have not helped me achieve what I've been seeking, which is
Mm.
eternal peace and happiness, constant state of joy, none of this duality roller coaster BS, but just always feeling like fully one and just in that deep eternal love. So I guess my response would be like, why can't it be different? Why is natural human behavior the definition we've been told have to be the only one? You know, like if you look at any time in history where there's been like a massive breakthrough in science, or let's just say science, because I think so many people look at science, it was because someone decided that the old hypothesis, the old definition, we're going to try something else. We're going to pretend that doesn't even exist and allow yourself to venture into something completely new. That's how we discover new things within the illusion. So I don't know why it wouldn't be any different outside. So I see, William, thank you for the conversation back and forth through your messages. I greatly appreciate that. But I think I love that you proposed that question, because a lot of people do say that to me. They're like, Ashley, like, hello, like, we're still humans. I have a friend, she's like, your thoughts are like an alien, you have to dress them up. And I'm like, that's the problem, we've been dressing them up, right? Like, the way of thinking that has got me to this place is not going to get me to where I want to go, because it hasn't got me there yet. So I appreciate, because I think that's a common thought that comes up into my mind and all of our minds, because we've been trained for it too. And I think that's what keeps a lot of us stuck. And that's why, like, I've made Big Miracle Energy my channel. Like, I have certain beliefs. I read the Course in Miracles and stuff, but really Big Miracle Energy is this safe space for people to question, because I was such a questioner growing up and there was no safe space. I always prickled everyone. So Big Miracle Energy, like the YouTube channel, the Patreon channel, Constantine, we don't agree half the time on Patreon, but it's a safe space for us all to not be attacked, for us to like explore and in 1 week believe something and the next week believe something else, and not be judged for that, but be celebrated that we're actually not just like going with what we're told. Sorry, I've gone on a rampage.
No. It's so powerful. I mean, there's a lot of things that come up, right? And I kind of want to go back for a second to, because while you're talking about that, right, I had our friend ChatGPT
Chat.
give me the differences as it sees between simple and easy. And it's such a beautiful way to look at it that I hadn't considered as well. I mean, we talked briefly about this, but I feel like for people like myself, where I'm coming a lot from the logical mind, or I used to come a lot from the logical mind, some of these things will click a lot more once I truly understand I should say the logic behind it, but the connection with everything behind it. And then it allows for that path to ease, to joy, to not having to be in duality and all of these areas of life. And so anyway, so what talking about is easy and simple, right? Like ChatGPT here tells us that simple focuses on the nature and structure of something, emphasize its lack of complexity. Easy focuses on the level of effort or difficulty involved in accomplishing that task, which is really cool.
Like the structure versus the act of accomplishing it. The structure of a task versus the act of accomplishing it.
Exactly. So in the case of my water, you're right. I had it wrong, because the act of going to cold water is simple, like literally just going to cold water or turn the shower onto a cold water. But it's not easy to overcome the fear, because it requires a certain level. It wasn't for me, I mean, a certain level of effort, until I found the easy path to it, right? And then the question, what if it could be easy? All of a sudden opened up the door to looking at the problem differently. So this is how I use it in my life, and especially with many of my clients, is when you're still, you're not at the Course of Miracle level yet, you're not doing that, and you're like having a hard time with challenges showing up in your life, and it's like, well, these are difficult. Well, what if it could be easy? What if it could be easy and simple? Or what it could be simple, right? Depending on where you're stuck. What would that look like? And that's the second question, is like, what would that look like? And what I allow myself to do is, the way I do this exercise is that I take a deep breath in, or I invite the person to take a deep breath in, and I ask the first question and I sit with it. And usually the first thing that comes up is the correct thing for me and for most people. And then I ask the second question: what would this look like if you were easy,
Mm.
or if you were easy and simple? And all of a sudden, some of the hows get to be revealed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I know you and I talked a lot about this. And I think Les Brown has a beautiful quote that says, "The how is not your business," meaning that the more you force the how, the more painful it is.
Mm.
Right?
Well, I would add to Les's quote is the how and the outcome are not your business.
Explain. I love that. And I
Because like we don't truly know our power and like what we truly are. Like everybody believes we're some sort of something other than a body. Okay, there is some people that believe that we're just like literally a body. We're here, we leave, we're done. That's it. But the majority of people believe that there's something more, which is spirit or your highest self or whatever. And we can all agree that we are completely unaware what spirit or your whole higher self or the Holy Spirit or God or Jesus or Buddha has access to, right? In that moment. So if we are that, we have no clue what actually makes us happy. Because if we actually had a clue of what makes us happy, then we would all be very happy right now all the time and we would never not be happy. So when you are saying that you know what outcome is best is when you are saying you know what makes you happy. So to me, you have no business with the how and you have no business with the outcome. Period. The only business you have is the present moment, which has nothing to do with the how or the outcome. It just has to do with being in the present moment and allowing yourself to be guided.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, the how leads to the outcome, right?
Yeah.
I want to take us a step back, as William has some beautiful questions here in the chat, and then we'll come back to what you just said as well. But I agree with you, right? Because in the end, if you're too focused on the outcome, then you're likely focused on the hows anyway, and then it's gonna.
You're focused on everything else but the present moment, period.
Yeah, and now, so William, to answer your question, for me, the issue with cold water, it was a fear. I mean, initially it started as a dislike. I thought I had a dislike to it. But it turned out that I had a fear that was based in a trauma I experienced when, or you can say trauma perhaps, or an experience I had when I was 2 years old. My mother was holding me. She was about to, I guess, jump in a boat to go on a, I guess, I don't know, on the lake where she was in the mountains back in Romania where I was born. And the dock, I guess, was not high quality. And she fell through the dock in the water. And it was like springtime, really cold in the mountains. And her fear actually transferred over to me because I actually never touched the water except with my feet, I believe. And that fear transferred. That's literally what I saw in the meditation. And then when I approached my mother, she shared the same story I saw in my vision, and I was blown away. So it turned out to be a fear that I essentially was a story of someone else that I took on. It was the fear she had for her life, the fear she had for my life, the fear she had for the unknown, and everything that was happening. And I struggled with it all my life. I'm 41 right now, right? And actually, you and I talked about this. This was like maybe 6 months ago now. So for 40 years of my life, unless the water was like 80 degrees plus and probably closer to 90 plus, I was miserable. So it's both a dislike and a fear. But the beautiful thing in life, and maybe not beautiful for most of us, fears are very well hidden from plain views. In other words, I didn't realize it was a fear until much, much later in life. I thought it was a dislike. So that's how many things manifest in our life. Like fears are so good at hiding that you think it's just who you are, but really deep down it's something that's controlling you, or at least that's how I see it. Actually, I would love to see your take on that.
Yeah. I mean, I have like one that would turn it upside down, but I think the way, yeah, I'm sorry. I was reading William's response right now. But yeah, so very similar. I think we store it as this fear and then we make this correlation with it in the memory in the mind. But William, something you asked, and you know that you struggle with these negative thoughts and it's slowing you down. and you'd love to shut it down, but not fully. So to me, that's also kind of correlates to this water thing. Is see, like it was just a shutdown. It was like we're just not going to look at it. I don't like the water. We're not going to go in it. That's stuffing it like into the darkness. But then we have the other side of the pendulum where it's like, oh, I don't like water and it's uncomfortable, so I'm going to just go jump in it, right? And force myself baptism by fire in this moment. Um, so I think like when it comes to the not wanting to have these thoughts and not wanting to experience them, that's part of like one of the things that gets us in this state of dis-ease, right? Which is not by coincidence that it's actually the word disease, but it's because we're putting it in the closet. You know, constantly I always talk about the monster under the bed. That's actually the mouse. It's like we don't want to feel it. We don't want to allow it to come out. We don't want to see the ease or lean into the ease because we've complicated it, right? So the simple part, the way the structure looks, how we have to move through it, it looks complicated when really it was ease. It was ease to just step into the water. But like you said, Constantine, in your mind, you had complicated it and made it difficult because you had all these things in your mind of what it should or shouldn't look like, of how it should or shouldn't happen, of how you should or shouldn't move through it. But when you
Exactly.
don't allow it to bubble up, it continues to run in the background. And like, you know, when you had that moment, yeah, like at the end of the day, the water doesn't matter. I'll be honest. Like, it doesn't matter if Constantine, if you ever got okay with cold water. But what you were saying about how fear hides, the ego was using that as a smoke and mirrors for you to not look at the shame and guilt. So the moment you stepped into that water, I remember you letting me know, and it was like you felt lighter, like hearing your voice. It was like this release of weight that you had been hiding behind this supposed dislike of water because you weren't willing to look at it.
Yeah, and that's why I was blown away, because it was such a beautiful example of how it can be simple and easy. Because literally, William, for maybe that's something that you can benefit from if you have any type of meditation practice. Literally, what I did, I was in the hot tub, and as I was getting ready to go into the cold plunge, I could feel myself getting very anxious. The fear was coming up. And I was like, man, this is really odd. Why do I have this? This doesn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense in that moment. It made sense for 40 years, but not in that moment. And I said, what if I can just sit with this and find out what it was? And I closed my eyes. I started my meditation process. I dropped deep down. And as I asked more questions, why is what is bringing this fear up? What is causing this? Maybe some why questions in there as well. All of a sudden, I started to see a vision of exactly what happened, and it allowed me to just observe it as a someone watching a movie, and then acknowledge what happened, have no judgment, shame, or guilt around it, or blame, and just let it go. And it's almost like when the movie ended, like you said, Ashley, the release happened and I felt lighter and I felt like something changed. But this was so new to me that I couldn't really, I was like, what just happened? And then I got up and I went to the cold plunge. And keep in mind, this was like Fahrenheit degrees, it was like close to 0 degrees that day. So it was really cold. Yet, yeah, it was still, cold to the body, but it wasn't miserable. It wasn't, there was nothing really there to hold me back. And that's why I'm like, that process I started using more and more in my life and in the life of those I get to work with now, because oftentimes, and I mean, most times, maybe Ashley would agree, is that like we make things more complicated because we come from the ego mind and we have the stories that have been built up over the years that only emphasize the ego story. And all of a sudden, and fears get disguised, that they have a mask on top of them. And it's very, very hard for us to at times see them. And then now I have the opportunity to look at my life and say, well, if something prickles me, to use your words, I really love that word, Ashley, so I use it a lot nowadays. If something prickles me, if something bothers me, it gives me an opportunity to explore that further and then flip it and say, can it be simple and easy? No, how can it be simple and easy?
Yeah. Well, it's shiny. It's bringing it to the light is what you did. What you did in that moment is you didn't go searching into the darkness. I mean, I don't think knowing what happened was necessary for your healing or for everybody's healing, but in that moment, your mind gave you what you needed to release it.
Yeah,
Because I think we can that kind of runs the fine line of like shadow work and going into the darkness, which, I don't believe we need to go into the darkness, but in that moment you just were open to whatever. You didn't say, tell me what happened, tell me why. You're
exactly.
just like, let me see if there's some sort of story behind it. So I just wanted to share that with people, because it could sound like we're saying you must go into the shadows, you must know
Mm.
what the story is to heal, but you don't
No,
like,
no,
if Constantine would have gone into like his space of, connecting and meditation, and all he did was feel the calm to get in the water and then felt the release, that could happen
it-
just as much as what did happen. Um,
and what I
but
said
yeah,
there, Ashley, I love what you just said, because I mean, what I've realized in working with so many people in so many different areas for the last 2 decades of my life, as a coach, as a mentor in the corporate world, as a project manager, is that you have frameworks in life, and when you try to force one way that the framework has to be implemented, that's when everything fails. Because we're all so unique. We all have such unique ways of being. We have our unique stories. We have our unique interpretations, that yes, the framework is great, but you want to model it to what works for you. And in my case there, actually, it wasn't that the vision was what did everything for me. If I were to say what was the big catalyst, was getting curious and not having expectations around how it would show up. So I could have
that
said,
well, I want to highlight that, because
yeah,
you just said, the framework and molding it to fit you, but I guess I would invite you to look at it a little differently, because I feel like what you followed that up with would say no, because instead what I see happened with you, just a different perspective, is that in that moment you released all frameworks and said, I don't know what's best, show me what's best. Right? Like
you're
you
absolutely right.
went to
You're
your
absolutely
safe
right.
space and you threw out everything. That's what curiosity is. True curiosity is like, I don't know, show me the way, right? Like, help me see something different. That is true curiosity, like a child, right? Like you could, gosh, a child, you could be like, oh, this is a plate, you eat your food off of this, right? And they'd be like, oh, okay, because they don't have a framework yet. They're like the true epitome of curiosity and complete openness to whatever you have to bring them. And that's what you were in that moment to, your guides, to your highest self, to the one that holds the map. That was like, oh, Constantine's finally open. All right, this is exactly what he needs in this moment to release this fear and to look at the shame and guilt that's hidden head on and see that it actually isn't controlling him the way he believes it is. Boom,
Boom, done. Yeah,
done.
beautiful said.
How easy was that? How simple and easeful was that?
Yeah.
You did nothing. No offense, Constantine, you did nothing.
No, I'm not saying I did. No.
Right. But
Um,
surrender. That's all you did was surrender. You shut the hell up and you open yourself up.
yeah. Very interesting. And very deep. Okay. Now,
But wait, I think that goes into the complicated part, right? Like even you saying there's these structures and God, what was the exact word you used?
framework.
Framework. There's frameworks in this world, and and I agree, like I have looked at life that way in the past of like frameworks, and it's different for Constantine than it is different for this person. Take what aligns with you here and what aligns with you there and create your own framework. What if that is part of making it difficult? Is even believing there is a framework, even believing there is some sort of framework you need to discover or create or whatever for yourself, but instead it's about not having the framework. I'm not saying that's the case. I just
Yeah.
that
But
popped in my head. What if it's like not?
what if the framework is a stepping stone towards what you just described? Because I keep looking back at the type of people I get to meet in my life, which are exactly the type of person I used to be, which is like, for me to jump from what I was to, let's say, the way you describe it, there was no, like, I couldn't see a path forward. I would dismiss it really quick. But if we put a framework in between, it's kind of the stepping stone to allow me to get to the other side.
But challenge here, maybe. So I think framework means like different ways of like viewing things or healing things or step-by-step processes to process stuff, right? That's what you're meaning, Constantine, right?
Yeah, so framework, I'm looking at it as a system. Like we're talking about the event I'm going to host on Thursday, which is Calm Success Live. I call it a system, right? So there's like 5 parts to it. In other words, like these are the 5 parts that that have benefited me the most to get to what I am today. A framework essentially is like, well, kind of like for a house, right? You put the frame around it. It's like, what do you build things around? And in this case, a framework for my system would be that there are 5 different components that you can apply to your life and make them your own, but they give you some guidelines on how you can start doing that. So it can be simple and easy. That's kind of how I see a framework. Now, another way to look at framework could be like a step-by-step guide almost, but you choose what the steps look like for you, because you're like, the framework might tell you, well, step 1 is to go into the cold water, right? Like in let's say the example we were talking about before. Well, maybe for you, step 1 may be that before you go into the cold water, you're actually going to take a deep breath in, you're going to start to meditate, and then you go into the cold water. So you model it, or you build it for your own use. But I absolutely agree with what you said too, Ashley, because technically you shouldn't, like if you let go and trust, then you don't need any of that, because that's the creation of your mind. That is the creation of your ego. But what I'm trying to say too is that I'm saying this is like, when I was myself for 37, 38 years of my life before I went on this path, I wouldn't have been able to just trust and let go. I mean, I could have, but I wasn't. I know myself back then. So framework allowed me to have a stepping stone towards what I am today, because I'm like, maybe I can try that. And I'm curious, because now we're talking about that, but I've seen the same thing happen to me for meditation and for breath work and for working with various spiritual guides. Not as much with like business coaches, because with business coaches, they usually have frameworks and whatnot. But like with a spiritual guide, I had a really hard time in the last, 6-7 months. Well, I should say the beginning of the year, because I was like, but tell me what to do. Like, how should this look like? Instead of just what you just said, trusting, and it will come to you. And it was such a huge paradigm shift for me to go there.
Yes. I mean, I think you said it perfectly. And we were just having a conversation in Lighthouse. My mastermind, we're covering people pleasing. And one of the things that it was just struggling about, the coaching industry has taught us to validate and reflect and validate someone's emotions. So validate means make it real. But in fact, it's not real. It's the story they have. And that's not about being mean or unempathetic. It's about being realistic and holding someone else to your same standard. But immediately everybody's question was like, well, then what do I say instead? Like, they needed an outline, a framework, an understanding of how to handle this situation. But that's already like deciding what's going to happen without guidance. And it doesn't mean like, say, like, if you're thinking about attending Constantine's event, it's great. And to me, where I'm at is not seeing these frameworks as what I'm seeking, but seeing the connections and interactions and what remembrance they have opportunities to prompt, and the forgiveness and things like that instead. Because I think when we get stuck in the framework, that's why personal development is a billion-dollar industry, is because people are seeing that there's got to be a specific framework that's going to heal me, that's going to save me, that's going to do all these things. So they're constantly searching for that framework, and they're never going to find it. I promise you. I don't care how many amazing Constantine things you attend, or Tony Robbins, or Mel Robbins, or any of these people's stuff, because the truth is, it's only when you surrender to the internal guidance and allow things to spark remembrance that you actually can begin to obtain peace and happiness within.
I want to ask something that, actually, because you hit the nail on the head. And I agree with you. I mean, the event I'm going to put on Thursday, is tailored to people that are successful in the material sense, in the ego sense, in the mind sense, where I was myself a few years ago, and needed a bit of guidance, empowerment, inspiration to move out of the mind and more into the heart. And because I know how I was before, I know what helped me was a framework. Doesn't mean it's going to help everyone, or you need a framework. And it's also, you want to drop the framework, like you said, once you get to a certain level, because the frameworks will not get you to the result you're hoping for in the end. But it's a stepping stone to it, in my opinion. Now, one thing I was going to mention today came up as you're talking about that. I was deep in a meditation journey yesterday, and with one of my guides, we had a discussion around what I'm doing right now, and what I'm bringing to the world, and what I bring to the people I get to touch, clients, people in one-on-one group coaching events. And what I was reminded was that I'm not teaching anyone anything. I'm not even helping them learn anything new. All I'm doing is I'm empowering them to remember. That's my only role. To help you remember your greatness, to help you remember your own answers, to help you remember what it is that you're seeking, or maybe that's the incorrect word, but what it is that you are. That's the word, or who you are. And that was so powerful. I remember in that moment when that message came through, it was like I was having conversation, like I'm having conversation with you. Literally, that ease you talked about earlier, that's why I felt like a load got lifted off my heart, because then I'm not like, it's not like, oh my God, what am I going to teach you at this event on Thursday? Oh, it's 4 hours. I need to like really know exactly what I'm going to teach you. It's not about teaching. It's just sharing my story, asking questions, and empowering you to find your own answers. Because I definitely don't have your answers. Ashley doesn't have your answers, but you have them. But the problem is, the challenge is that we have the answers, but they're clouded just the same way the fears don't show up, while your answers are below years and years of indoctrination and the ego taking a center stage, and the stories of someone else being built in your life.
Yeah, I mean, that's so beautiful that you see that, because it's so true. And I would invite you to take it even a stage of less responsibility, because I still feel you hold some great responsibility of empowerment, right? That's a word of responsibility, that really your only job here is forgiving. Right? It's for the opportunity to forgive, right? Like if someone prickles you, or, it's a moment of forgiveness, which is a realization that it's just your mind acting out something, and it's not actually happening to you. And then forgiving, like 2 words, forgiving. So what I hear you actually saying is that you're seeing your events as an opportunity for giving, the 2 words,
Yeah,
right?
to
That's your
give,
intention right
yeah.
now. But in giving is receiving. And if we truly are one, then as long as you show up, even if you're the only person there, Constantine, you're giving. And that's why my YouTube channel really started, was like, people comment stuff on there of like, you're preachy, or this, you're that. It's like, I appreciate it, but this channel was started as just an opportunity for giving, in both aspects, for myself, for the capital S self, which is one. Right? So as you're teaching, you're learning yourself, Constantine. So as you're giving, you're receiving. As you're sharing, you're remembering. It goes deeper. Like our conversations, Patrick and I were talking about how everything's so transactional these days, especially like in the coaching industry, where everybody's always eyeing up everyone of like, oh, can they buy my services? Can they not? And like they're putting up all these paywalls behind their knowledge, because their knowledge is so special. And granted, yeah, clients pay to work with me to be the light, but also, how often that I am just meeting people and sharing, and like essentially coaching people constantly, but not being like, oh, you're not paying me, because for me, it's forgiving. And I know that some people don't have the means to pay. Some people won't pay, but I will always be taken care of. Like maybe I won't have excess of money because that's not my purpose here. I don't give a shit about the things. I give a shit about remembering and waking up and going home. And so as long as I'm constantly in that state of forgiveness, right? Whether it's actual forgiveness, realizing that my mind is playing tricks on me, or forgiving, like to just keep giving, keep sharing, keep showing up and giving. And the more I realize it's not at this level of form, and that it can all happen at just like such a deeper level. So now I'm about to go down a rabbit hole. So I will stop it
Before you
there.
go, take a look at what William posted. I mean, it's true because you touched on this too, right? Like maybe, he's saying it is teaching, you're giving information someone never thought of. And I can see it like that. I can also see it from the point of like, I'm sharing a perspective that will ignite remembrance within you. Because the way I understand it, I'm curious to see you, Ashley, what you think is that we are all knowing souls coming into this life, and then we choose to forgive, or whatever happens when we get born, and we forget everything. And then we start remembering things based on where we grow up, right? The society we grow up in, the parents, the caretakers, all of that. And then throughout our life, we keep remembering stuff. But maybe if we find the right guides, or as we find the right guides, their perspectives enable us to remember our true nature, remember our greatness, remember our creative abilities, right? Because we're creators of our lives. That's how I see it. And yeah, it can be teaching, it can be seen as teaching, but teaching to me implies it's coming from a place where I know more than you. And I see now as me having a different perspective than you. It may appear as I know more, but in the end, we all know the same amount of stuff. I'm curious to see your take, Ashley.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all one. So, like, the best way for someone tuning in is to think of your dream last night. Like, if I dreamt that Constantine and I were having this conversation and that William is commenting, it doesn't mean that they walked into my mind in my dream. It was all contained in the same mind. So what I see everyone as a mirror, right? So it's not that Constantine is providing me something because he's a separate individual. It's that Constantine is the mirror that my mind needs, or the mind needs in this moment, to process another level of forgiveness, right? Like literally, that's how simple it is. Everything is forgiving. Period. That's it. At the end of the day, everything is for giving, and there is no true
I love that.
There is no new ideas, period. Like, it's so funny, more and more, like, I think I have these massive epiphanies, which I do for where I'm at in the mind, and then literally it's usually like a week later, I watch some video or read a book or watch a movie, and the person literally says verbatim the massive breakthrough I just had. And I'm like, damn, like, was that always there? Or did that just get added in because I just thought of it, right? Because I don't. Like, that's making you believe that you are a creator, and that's what got us into this place in the first place. But instead, like, we're just mirrors. Everybody is literally a mirror for you. They are not separate from you. Right? Like, when I look in the mirror, like right now, I see me on the screen, which essentially we could call it a friggin' Y2K mirror. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's not another Ashley. That's the same. It's just a mirror reflection. So just because when I look in the mirror and I see Constantine doesn't mean he's separate. It's just the mirror I'm seeing in this moment happens to appear to be a projection of Constantine, but it's all happening in the mind. This is all for the mind to wake up, right? Like, if we're like your dreams, that's why they're so realistic. Literally last night I was at ice cream parlor in my dream. I make this amazing ice cream. Patrick wanted this nasty mango dark chocolate, which I do not believe fruit belongs in your ice cream. Like, that is not, like, fruit is separate. Ice cream is a decadent thing.
I
And
disagree.
so
But
so the guy was like, I trusted him. I trusted this guy at the ice cream parlor, and I said, I love chocolate, maybe even some cookie dough and some Reese's peanut butter cups, because that's what I used to make at Dairy Queen when I was young. The guy comes back and he gives me this ice cream. He's like, it's the best ice cream ever. I start eating it, and it reminds me of a Nestle Quick Bar, which I thought those were the biggest disappointment of a chocolate bar when I was a child. And I was just mortified. But literally, I could taste it in my dream. I mean, like, if we went down, like metaphysical or the body and stuff, men have wet dreams,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
tell me that's not real, to the point that your body's responding. It's the same damn thing. So there is no one separate right now. William, Constantine, we're all one. We just all appear to be projected differently. And we're all we're in a fun house right now because there's 3 mirrors looking at each other.
Exactly. And do you know what it reminded me of? You shared the video earlier this week with me that you created, the one that dumpster fire moments, navigating ego, fear, and through joy.
God, I love that thumbnail. I'm so proud of that thumbnail.
Yes, it looks beautiful, right? And you sent it to me. Let me look at this here, right? You sent it to me on Tuesday, and you're like, I think you'd appreciate this video. I know how beautiful the synchronicities go, right, Ashley? Because I'm like, okay, you know what? Awesome, I'll check it out. Now, my week ran away from me, and I, to some degree, forgot about the video until yesterday. And I'm like, you know what? Ashley sent me that. She always sends me awesome stuff. I'm going to check it out. And I had the chance to check it out. But not before I had a beautiful meditation session in the morning, an hour-long journey, that in this came up the question of, what if it could be easy? Again, reminding me easy and simple and all that stuff. And then I get to watch your video. And as I watch the video, I'm reminded of the same thing I just had happen a few hours before in my meditation. And I was like, oh my God, like, it's like the universe is sending you reminders in so many beautiful ways. And when it's like compounding, you're seeing the synchronicity, like, okay, there's something here, you gotta dive deeper. Because then I sent you the message, I said, beautiful video. And it's like, it reminded me of the reminder I got this morning of what if it is easy, how would it look like? Because it is easy, but not always simple, or the other way around.
Well, it's both. It's simple and easy, hence our title, Constantine. Yeah, it's simple and easy, and I don't know.
I mean, let's put it this way. Is the goal simple and easy then? And then we need to find how that looks like, right? That's how I see it. It's like,
well, no, you don't need to find anything. So like, you just need to lean in to the simple and easy. So what does that mean? That means like all these people doing these things that they absolutely hate. Like Miracle Morning is a key one, where people wake up at 4 a.m. because they feel like if they wake up early, they'll get so much done before anybody else. But if every morning when your alarm clock goes off and you feel dread, that is not ease. That is dis-ease. That is you creating discomfort that is unnecessary because you think there is some sort of gain on the other side, which means, if we go back to the quote you said earlier that I shifted, which means you have decided that you know the how and the outcome.
Yeah.
That, what I mean is lean into the ease. When you think of making a video, when you think of whatever, if it does not bring you joy, do not do it in that moment. And watch this. When you watch this video, that's my challenge to you. Do that for 1 week. But also, this is not an opportunity for you to allow the ego to come in and be like, I'm not going to do anything. Like, when you are just truly do not feel joy to do that, and you'd have to push against the river to get it done, versus I'm just being a prick and like, I'm going to just like use this to my benefit, right? That's just as bad. That's the other side of the pendulum. But when you truly lean into the ease, Constantine, like, I have not used a to-do list in like over 3 months now. And guess what? I can't think of a single dang thing that didn't get done. And now I've blown up because it needed to get done. Like, there has not been a moment. I've probably actually got more remembrance or more done than I have ever got done because I did it when it was easeful. So like the other day, 2 days ago, I wanted to get a video. my plan was to get a video edited, do all this other stuff, and I didn't feel like it. And I'll be honest, at first the ego was like, you're being lazy, blah, blah. And so I sat on the couch. Next thing you know, I had this massive inspiration to work on my upcoming retreat, got so much done that then led into me getting everything done that I had wanted to get done and so much more. But if I would have, for the first 6 hours of the day, sat at my desk staring at Descript, it would have been the most awful experience ever. And guess what? That video would have been created with that energy.
Absolutely.
So lean into the ease. If it feels joyous, do it. If it doesn't, check yourself. Make sure it's not the ego trying to sneak in, but don't do it. Why?
I love the reminder there because, funny enough, you mentioned the lists, right? The to-do lists. I used to be big into them. I mean, I project manager background, all those certifications didn't go wasted, right? So I'll have all these massive lists. And of course, they would add anxiety because your list is never finished, right? Like you're always going to have things to add to it. And I think for me, it's been about 8-9 months since I've done a list. And then earlier this week, I was like, or maybe a week and a half ago now, as I'm preparing for the event, I was like, oh my God, I have so many things to do. And I allowed the ego to take control. And I'll show this. I made a list for the first time in 8 months. Guess what? It stayed here on the table unused and everything got done. And I'm looking at the list now. You just reminded me because I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't looked at this in like 7 days. I'm like, oh yeah, this is easy because you're allowing yourself to, that things will get done by X date because you may have, a schedule to follow or you have to go to work or whatever. But if you're not forcing it, then they will be done when it's best for you as opposed to when you think it's best.
Best, and I invite even another tweak to that statement when it is best for the whole, because that's another thing where like is your plan to be here as for me, my goal is to heal for the one, to do what's best, not what's best, but to do for the whole. It's no longer about Ashley, the persona, becoming famous and building an empire. And trust me, 3-4 years ago, when I set out on this journey, like I was going to build an empire, like blah, 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 all these things. And now it's like, no, like it is not about the persona of Ashley. It is about the oneness that we all are. And so that means sometimes I think that what's best for me is more important. And then I often get reminded that that's not what the end game is here. But then you can intricately see how that's woven later. Like, I mean, that's so much.
Yeah.
So much deep. Oh, we're over time too.
Just about, yeah. I mean, we started a bit late, but William has some beautiful comments there. Maybe we'll wrap up with what he's saying. And William, I mean, it comes from both of us, I'm sure. Thank you for your engagement and chatting with us. If you ever want to be live with us, we do go live with guests and Patreon members of Ashley's as well every now and then, right? So you can always look at having that. But look at what William is saying here, right? He works with a lot of ego-driven people. And it used to make him annoyed, right? Had to understand that I'm choosing to dislike things I have no control over. Now, that's an interesting statement. And again, yeah, William, don't need to apologize. We love engagement, right? Like we go live because we love talking to each other, but we also love having conversations with other people because, like Ashley said, this is forgiving. Like, why keep it just to the two of us when you can be giving this to others and perhaps help you on your path? And
yeah, I would invite you with I work with a lot of ego-driven people and it used to make you annoyed. And I love how you understood that you were choosing to dislike things because one of the things I talk most about is the power of your perception, and it's our perception of others. So I would invite you to even... Can you link the other channel? Are we both on this channel? Did you see that, Constantin?
I think he's on your channel, and I'm on. Yes, I'll give you. I'm responding to you in the chat. In the other one, our streaming app is not doing its best job, but allowing me to chat with you. But I'll chat in the YouTube. So go ahead, Ashley. Continue your thought.
Yeah. So just an invitation, because it's a mirror, right? So just an opportunity to see some of the things showing up in them that possibly is a reflection of some areas of yourself still seeking your attention. And like the purple hair or the pink hair, have I shared that on here? Of where
Oh,
if
that's
you're
a good
walking
one.
down the
Yeah.
street and you look exactly how you are, you have dark brown hair, blah blah, and someone says, oh my gosh, I hate your pink hair, you're going to respond like with no real response, or like a what the F are you talking about, because there is no validity to you. But if they say I hate your brown hair, there may be some sort of reaction because a part of you believes it's true that you do have brown hair. So
Mhm.
just an invitation with that, William. I have lots of videos about the mirror. There's one actually called Mirror Mirror. I'll somehow try to tag it for you, but it's really a beautiful way to take a step back and look at what you do have power over. Um, but yeah, thank you so much, William. Greatly appreciate it. Again, if you would like to like have a live conversation, because that's how it was made. Thanks, Kisma. Much love.
Let's
Obviously.
give them a break.
Yeah.
Uh,
But if you'd like to have a conversation with us, go ahead and reach out. Or our Patreon once a month is my Big Miracle Energy Patreon. We have conversations twice a month, once live, and we also have a book club going on where we just dive deep into different discussion like this. So would
yeah.
love that.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, as we wrap up today, again, thank you everyone that's tuned in. Quite a few beautiful souls here in the room with us. And I'll tell you a bit more about, really quick, about what I do. So I did mention the Calm Success Live event. I'm going to put this here. It's a masterclass I host every, 6 to 8 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's my way of giving back as well, sharing more of my story, the story of some people I got to work with. And we talked frameworks, right? I have a system of sorts that helped me to get to what I am today, and I share that with people in the hopes that it inspires you and empowers you to take your journey to whatever level is beneficial for you when you want to go to. And to sign up for that, it's free, so no cost. calmsuccesslive.com. You see it on the screen. I would love to see every single one of you there. It's an interactive 4-hour masterclass in the evening, Eastern time of this coming Thursday. And actually, tell us a bit about your channel
Crap, it's already
on your
this
Pantheon.
Thursday. Yeah. So my Patreon is Big Miracle Energy Patreon. It's a beautiful community of individuals just walking with one another on our journey back home. My favorite quote by Ram Dass. And you can sign up. A $33 tier is really the opportunity to have live interaction and Q&A and past videos. Otherwise, I've got my Big Miracle Energy YouTube. I do one-on-one coaching. I also do have a mastermind called Lighthouse. But yeah, love it.
Perfect. Just responding in the chat here, Ashley. And again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, William.
Yes, thank you so much love and light.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.